Yeah, so part two with Corey is like 66 pages ish. And I was like, dang, like towards the end of it, I was like, man, this is such a page turner. That section was so right. So Anna meets her at yoga, and
Hmm.
Corey seems to be out of place. It's in Irvine, and very very, very rich folks as well. And she
Yeah.
just didn't seem to fit in. Wasn't even sure that she was pregnant. She's, skinny. She's a lot younger than most of the mothers. And all within within their walk back to where she was staying with her sister is where we get all the story. And it's safe to say that she didn't grow up with a lot of money, she and her sister. And so I wonder about how her family situation you think maybe informed her actions.
Mm. I think in every way. I mean, so her mother, it was never very stable to begin with. But her mother dies when she's a young teen, or I don't remember.
Uh,
I imagine her like, preteen,
yeah.
and her father leaves them. So it's basically Corey, her older sister Leah, and then they have twins that are a couple years younger. So it's four young sisters living in this apartment in Riverside, and it's just a cauldron in my mind
Mm.
of tension, and it's just ripe for a young boy to come in. And Corey is much more into, wanting to have sex, and she just is much more boy crazy, for lack of a better
Hmm.
term. But the boy that enters is interested in her sister Leah. And I had fun writing that section. I It was fun in that it was kind of a departure from what I was writing before, in terms of more like there's some more sex.
Yeah.
Like, and it was a real challenge. I mean, it was a fun challenge to write from somebody who is quite different from me, Corey, and different circumstances in life, and just a different set of challenges. But I felt very close to her. I can't really explain
Hmm.
why. I feel like I had met, maybe this is where clients come in actually. I have treated a lot of clients her age who have been in similar situations, and felt such a fondness for them, and also just in awe of how scrappy they can be, and like how they can survive these incredible things at such a young age, when I felt like this pampered little puppy who like had a hard time with things. So I was really kind of intimidated and impressed with a lot of them. And Corey is one of, that kind of person to me. And I also just really wanted to challenge myself to write more sex and like sexy tension and sexy scenes, which is not, I mean, I love reading that stuff, but it's hard to write. So I find myself like flash cut to morning kind of
Hmm.
writing.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah, right.
but I felt like this wasn't an option in
Yeah,
this
yeah.
section. So for a while, the sub in my computer, it was like Anna Writes Sex was like the name of the
Uh,
of the chapter.
well, so Danny is the one who enters the family. He's like big man on campus in many ways, but he seems to be so humble and such a good guy and so caring and so helpful. He comes from money. He's gonna be going to USC and all that. He's a great guy until he's not.
Yeah, I really feel for Danny. I think that there's a way to look at him that is not favorable, and that he, impregnates one sister and sleeps with the other,
Yeah,
um, and
that'll
then
do it.
leaves them
He'll
both.
lose some goodwill.
Yes, I mean that's not upstanding. However, I found in writing him that I just really felt for him too.
Uh,
Like, he's also young, and not that that's an excuse, because I think that, young people are what they're doing, and more than we give them credit for. But
Sure.
in terms of his life is ahead of him as well. So he's faced with really big challenges, and he's presented with 17-year-old boys, presented with sex of a 15-year-old girl literally next to him in bed. I think that's like a hard thing it's sympathetic. Like I could sympathize with that impulse to want to engage in that, even though the most upstanding thing wouldn't be to do that. But I feel like he's kind of a tragic character in my mind.
Yeah. Well, so in the same way, Leah is mothering the kids from her relationship with Danny, the twins, with another man, and again seems to be kind of like with Elizabeth and her new situation. Things seem to be good financially; they're good. Seem to be with a good person, but there's a lot that goes on, and just that could be like, I don't know, a novella by itself or something. And it's just a page turner, and it's like, wow. So the writing was, like you said, a departure from what you're used to, but you nailed it.
Thank you.
Yeah. With with part 3 is a very short one, and that's No Blue, and that's similar to what you talked about with, like, that's like the narrator like really inserting her story in. And the first sentence is very moving. First two, to say the least. It's, quote, "I know what they mean now when they say they lost the baby." And there's even a comma after now. "I know what they mean now, comma, when they say they lost the baby. They mean they don't know where the baby is." And I just feel like that could be taken, that especially that second sentence could be taken in 4 or 5 different ways, the idea of where the baby is. And just that, to me, what I really got out of that chapter, with, there's a lot of obvious rage and justified rage, and rage that you cannot empathize with unless you're the mother, a mother in a similar situation, but we can sympathize with. And there's anger, there's capital letters, the diction is very aggressive, there's references to Medea, right? And just anger. And the end of that section, which again is short, is, quote, "Let me write this another way," and that leads into section 4. But what I really got from section 3 and 4, and so much of the book, is that, and I'm not saying anything new, we as Americans, we don't know how to grieve.
Yeah.
And doubly so, right, if it's for a miscarriage or a loss of a baby.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. I still find it so validating when people say we don't know how to grieve. There's nothing truer, and I find that people who have been initiated into grief, it feels like a real initiation to me. No matter what the kind of loss was, they all feel that way. Like no one knows how to talk to you.
Right.
No one knows what to say. Everyone's so afraid of saying the wrong thing. They don't say anything. They run away because they think you want privacy when really you might not. You might want connection. I think we have a long way to go in that respect of just knowing how to let people grieve and what that looks like. I think other cultures do a better job than us.
That's for sure. Yeah, I was listening to somebody recently who lost his son, like I think teenager, young 20s, and he was talking about somebody who, I mean, literally like walked awkwardly up to him, like, you could just see this person coming up to him, to the grieving father, awkwardly, and basically said something like, "I don't know what to say, but..." How great is that, though? That's something.
Yeah, totally. I feel so much more comfortable now that I've been through grief, that just saying I don't know what to say, or I know there's nothing I can say, but I'm not going to run away. And I err more on the side of checking in too much, or sending something that they might not want, but just because I know now what it feels like to receive those gestures, and how much they mean to me, even if I didn't, use the candle that they gave me. That doesn't matter. It was the fact. It's obviously, cliche. The thought is what says that they're not afraid of what you're going through.
And it's hard not to be afraid. I mean, I get it. I get why people would be. quiet or not know what to say or not say anything.
Oh yeah, and
But
I have been there too. I mean, especially before, I would
yes.
be much more likely to kind of give so much space,
Mm-hmm.
uh, for my own comfort.
Right.
Um, maybe thinking it was for theirs as well, but definitely for
Mm.
my own.
Yeah. So with part four, which is, it goes back and forth with Anna and her mother Ruth. Her mother Ruth had lost of pregnancy, but in a different way. Where Jane, the name they gave the baby, the pregnancy wasn't viable, right? And there was also the story of how Anna's father had gone through cancer at a really like young age, probably 20s, right?
Yeah, like late 20s. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, and there's the I wish it weren't so sad. But the writing is just incredible. Like the minutia of life, like for Anna and for Ruth afterwards, after the pregnancies had not become viable, the pregnancies where the baby was lost. Just like the minutia of life and the clinicalness, if that's the word, the clinicalness of the doctor. And Anna notes sometimes like, oh man, they definitely seem to be reading from the same manual and didn't hate it. Like it wasn't like, oh, this is not genuine. It's like I kind of appreciate it, right? And just things like what music do you want to have playing, and all those
Yeah.
things were just really moving. And just again, empathy may not be possible for a lot of us, but sympathy, it brings us closer for sure.
Yeah. It's again that idea that there's no villains in this
Mm-hmm.
story, that none of the losses were caused by anything
Right.
other than just really it happens,
Mm-hmm.
it's life, unfortunately, um for some of us. And I I was so interested in that story of the mother because my mother had a very similar
Mm.
loss. We both had late term abortions of very wanted babies because of heart defects,
Mm.
which is just the odds of that are extremely slim.
Oh, I bet. God.
And it was not a related genetic. It wasn't like, the gene of my mother's baby was related to mine. It was
Uh-huh.
freak coincidence. And as I was going through my own loss, I was so interested in just, yeah, like the dailiness of
Yeah.
how do you like put one foot in front of the other, and
Mm.
like, and then think about getting pregnant again because you still want the baby.
Right.
And being pregnant after loss is a whole other deal. I mean, I was already anxious. So then I was like really, really anxious, extremely
Mm.
anxious for ended up being my third pregnancy because I lost another one in the middle.
Mm.
Um, but that is what so many people go through in their own way. Like, that loss is pretty
Right.
unique, rare, but like some sort of rupture, even if it's not a loss, but like a breakup or a change of circumstance or something that makes the family that you imagine not being the one that actually is created, I think happens to virtually all of us on some level. And I had no appreciation before I tried to get pregnant, of what goes into making a family.
Mm. Yeah.
Just, I mean, when people tell the story, they often kind of skip over that. They're like, and then I had kids.
Yes.
And then when you're having kids, you're like, but wait, slow down, zoom in
Uh-huh.
really up close. Like, how did you conceive? How long did you try? How hard
Mm.
was it to wait? Like, what was, and I just got really into those. And then when you have a loss, like, okay, what do you do when your milk comes in? What did you do did you have a ceremony? Like that, those kinds of details become so much more important.
Yeah. Definitely. And so, that I mean, even you even mentioned like the narrator, like when she's watching like a Thor movie the day night out after, and just like it's so specific, and like you talk about just that minutia, the banality of it all is very moving because it's so commonplace, because it's so unemotional. Just watching a TV show, makes it so much more understatement.
Yeah. And yet I feel like Marvel, it does this to people. I mean, there's a lot of critiques you could write about Marvel, and there could be lots of books written about ways in which they don't stand up to standards. But I find them so moving. I cry in
Mm,
every single one. I just watched
mm,
Black Panther 2. I had
okay.
to wait until it came out on Disney Plus, and I was I was sobbing like opening
Uh,
credits, like immediately.
uh, does it reference Chadwick Boseman?
Oh, well, there's that, but that just
Uh,
something about them.
mm,
Um, they just like tap into something for so many of us,
hmm.
uh, that is really, I think that's why they're so successful. Even if
Uh-huh.
it's like in this really heavy-handed way
Sure.
sometimes. Like I don't think I've made it through one movie without crying.
Wow.
Like Ant-Man, you
Wow.
know.
You should be an influencer for
I
for Marvel.
well, the thing is, I'm also like have critiques, about some like
Okay.
representation stuff. So I'm not like 100% behind everything they
Yeah.
do. I'm a puddle for every movie.
Oh man.
And after we had our loss, we watched all these Marvel movies thinking, oh, this will be a good escape. I just want to watch this action movie.
Yeah, exactly. I think of them as escapes. No, huh?
Yeah, but I was like, but
Uh,
there's death and loss and
yeah.
you can't escape it.
Oh man. So the next chapter, the next part is Marisol or Mary Soul, and so Anna. I mean, you talk about some of the minutia. This is not minutia, but like the what do you do? This is like the expected due date of the baby she lost, and she has a very caring, loving husband, but she decides, hey, I need to get away. So Joshua Tree, for those who know SoCal, and definitely very much of a getaway place. And she's at a bar and she meets Mary Soul, and she hears her story, and is a great listener. Double meaning there, maybe. Anna is a great listener, and she gets Mary Soul's story, and Mary Soul's artsy. She's probably what, like mid 40s or so when she's at the
Yeah,
bar,
I
maybe
had to
a
do the
little
math at
older.
some point, but yeah, I think like 45-ish.
Yeah, and she talks about how she um in a way had a baby but not, and we find out about her going to Maine. She was escaping as well. Escape sounds like a negative thing, but her father had died by suicide.
Mm-hmm.
She's 19, 20 years old, and she goes to Maine, kind of like on a not kind of like on a spur of the moment, sees a little flyer. Remember the days of flyers before like everything was electronic?
I
And right.
I had to rewrite that because I just had everything on the internet, and then I was like, oh, right. Like,
Uh-huh.
I don't remember what year, but
No,
that's not how
Craigslist.
they're doing. Yeah.
And so she's with sorry, remind me of the couple, that George and Ellen,
Ellen, yeah.
right? And she's drawn to Ellen. Ellen's a little bit younger than George. They're both very nice people. George is, losing a lot of his faculties as an artist, but she's kind of like his what's the word? Not novice. Isn't there like a
Oh,
apprentice, I guess?
Marisol, yeah, she's like his assistant. She does some of
Right.
the fine motor
Right.
drawing because he can't do it
Right.
anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's very much in the middle of nowhere. It's art. You talk to one or two people a day. If at first she wasn't talking to Ellen a lot, not out of any animosity, but they have small meals. It's in many ways is what she needed to get away and really be an artist. I'm interested in her infatuation with Ellen. I mean, is this like a lust thing? Is this just like yeah, where that infatuation comes from, as well as like how much of that has to do with her age, how much of just her whole experience had to do with her age and kind of being, I guess, naive to the world.
Yeah. I mean, I think all of it. She's quite vulnerable when she arrives there and is really looking for, I think, care and stability of any kind.
Yeah.
And they give her that, or the illusion of
Mm-hmm.
that. And her vulnerability is felt by both of George and Ellen, and they react to it differently. George takes her, is senses that she has nowhere to go, and so hires
Mm-hmm.
her. It's not like she's not qualified, but definitely takes that into account, I think, by hiring her like to start immediately.
Mm-hmm.
um, and the Ellen character to me is really complicated. I have complicated feelings toward her because she senses Marisol's vulnerability as well, and her feelings that I think Marisol's even a little bit unsure about how much of this is like I'm infatuated with her as a person and also maybe have a crush on her and sexual feelings toward her,
Mm-hmm.
because it's unclear what Ellen's giving her too. So there's a lot of kind of questionable energy
Mm-hmm.
between them, but Ellen sees an opportunity for herself and Marisol's vulnerability. there are lots of spoilers in this interview, just so people are aware at this point. But um, I felt Ellen really, really wants a baby. She's never been pregnant. She's been trying to be pregnant for many, many, many years. And I felt a really renewed empathy for that feeling,
Mm.
and felt like there are lengths that one might go to get that I wouldn't be able to embody before, knowing what that felt like to want something so badly that you would do some questionable things to get it. And I was also really interested in that chapter which I wrote after the loss completely, in what it means to be kind of a mother, or like have entered a maternal place partially, which I had felt like I felt like I had been a mother, but then I had no child. So I was never really sure what to say when people were like, is this your first? Or,
Mm.
that it was I had a long answer
Yeah, 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 yeah.
for like any question like that. And Marisol also does, she is in some ways a mother, but also it depends who you ask, and it depends how you tell the story.
Right, right. Do you feel like Ellen is a manipulator?
I don't think she's evil. I don't think anyone's evil in this book, but I think she has an agenda.
Yeah, I guess what I'm asking is, do you think is she calculated, do you think? Or do you think it's kind of like as it comes, she steps in?
I I like to think of her as a little calculated, but not like, I feel like if Marisol really wasn't into the idea, she would have backed
Hmm.
off. Like I want to give her some credit.
Yeah,
But she she does kind of sow the seeds
yeah.
for this exchange. And I think maybe could have gone through greater lengths to make sure Marisol like fully understood what this process was,
Hmm.
paid her more,
Mm.
been a little bit more fair to her
Yeah,
in the
right.
process. Yeah, like I said, I have complicated feelings toward her. I was
But
afraid I would become her.
uh-huh. There, I mean, there's a really nice is a generic term, but a nice, scene with like the real platonic connection that Marisol and Anna make, you know,
Mm,
after, at the bar and afterwards and all that. And there's all, also Anna really realizing like, hey, I wish I would have had someone here to share this with, particularly Isaac, her husband. But Marisol was pretty was a really good second prize, if you will, second place. Maybe
mhm,
that's what she needed on that particular night. We're not going to spoil too much. The last chapter is summer, and it's in Tahoe, in Northern California. We're talking about maybe a couple Sacramento shout outs and
mhm,
California shout outs, but just this whole idea of like, what now, for Anna. Her sister has given birth. Her sister has a little one,
mhm.
and you write so well about just the feelings of Anna. Like, what do you say when you see the little one? Because you're so 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 happy, but you're also, I'm sure, thinking of like that, thinking that could have been mine, or
Right,
and all of
right.
those things. And of course there's that complicated relationship with her sister, as well. But just like this whole book, like, it doesn't there's nothing like cheesy or Mickey Mousey, but there's some real joy, there's some real sadness. And yeah, we may have given a couple of spoilers, but it's like just the whole is so much more than the parts. Like, I'm so impressed about how you made it all come together. And these stories that seem to be disparate, they have a through line that, again, is not an obvious through line for some of them. But there's just so much connection that it really comes together. And like, I'll have to say it again, the part is so much more than the whole is so much more than the part. Did I say that right the first time? That's what I meant to say.
I don't know, but I felt what you meant,
Okay.
and thank you. I appreciate that.
I would love to maybe end by asking if you, some of the really cool feedback you've gotten from readers.
Mm. I've been really touched by the responses from people I who I know and who I don't know, like people in my
Yeah.
life who had it really resonated with, and I would never imagined, it's funny who you connect with and who you don't when you start sharing stories like this. My favorite thing is when I hear people saying that it made them have conversations with their friends or their
Mm,
sisters or their parents, their mothers, that they hadn't had before around these things. And that is like, just makes me feel
I bet.
like I I wanted it to not be the end of a conversation around
Hmm.
any of things, because I feel like people do, in the right context, like want to talk about them and want to share their stories. And we share our stories so much more easily when we have received a story.
No doubt.
Um, so I hoped that in sharing this book, which includes, my story, that other people would feel permission to talk about it. So, I mean, my friend told me that she read it and she gave it to her mom, and she said the book for like 3 hours. But it was clear that they talked about the book for like 5 minutes, and then just talked about each other's, like her
Uh,
mother's story and her parents' story that she had never heard before. And that's, I want my book to just like
yeah.
help get them there and then get out of the way and let
Yeah.
them talk.
Yeah. Great characters, really interesting characters. The Corey story, page turner novella, like soap opera style, but also just like a really important book because I don't think there have been a lot of books written about the subject matter, right? I mean, in the way that you did.
I wanted to read them desperately and I
There you
couldn't find
go.
them. I'm sure
There
there
you
are,
go.
but I couldn't find them.
Right. What's that expression about, write the book that you want to read?
Exactly. Yeah,
Oversimplifying it. Yeah.
that's what this was for me.
Yeah. Well, any ideas about what's coming next? I know hey, you wrote a great book and maybe you're just like, I'm gonna take a break, but are you working on anything else? Any future projects that you can want to share
Yes, I would say not almost done, but I can see the finish
about the Marvel
area
universe? No.
of yeah, I write for Marvel now. No, if I did, I'd have like so much more money.
Yeah.
Uh, I think I'm almost done-ish with my next thing. I thought that I would finish The Long Answer, which happened 2 weeks before I gave birth, by the way. So
Whoa.
I thought, okay, I'm gonna finish this book, have a baby, take a break, be a mom. Um, and that did not happen. I felt like I wanted to write more than ever, which was deeply
Mm,
uncomfortable because I had no time to do it and I was so tired.
yeah.
So that part of me did not quiet down at all. It just got a
Mm,
lot louder.
mhm,
So I've been writing, unevenly when I can for the past
mm,
2 years, but I will have something about family stories and family secrets and early motherhood stuff coming
cool.
at some point.
Cool. Cool. Cryptic enough, but also intriguing enough. Yeah, I like it. I like it. Well, again, thanks so much. I mean, the book you talk about is incredibly personal, and thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for sharing that book and just the rationale behind it. And it's really cool to talk to you in your lab. I don't know if that's literally your lab, but just talk to you about the book and the thought behind it. And like I said, for those who are listening, it's a great read. It's a must read. It's so important, and it's about something that's so common, right?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be able to talk about it with someone who read it so carefully and with such attention. That just, it feels nice as the writer. Thank you.
Oh, so appreciate it. Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure today to speak with Anna Hogeland for episode 165. Continue good luck to her with her writing. And so looking forward to reading the next and the next and the next. You can now subscribe to the Chills at Will podcast on Apple Podcasts and leave a 5-star review. You can also ask for it by name using Alexa and find it on Stitcher, Spotify, and Amazon Music. Follow me on Instagram where I'm at Chills at Will Podcast or on Twitter where I'm at Chills at Will PO1. And Anna, you're on just Instagram, right?
I'm on just Instagram. It's all I can handle, but it's
So smart.
Anna, Anna writes in Vermont.
Anna writes in Vermont. You are so smart to do that. You can watch this and other episodes on YouTube. Watch and subscribe to the Chills at Will podcast channel. Sign up now for the Chills at Will podcast Patreon. It can be found at patreon.com/Chills at Will podcast Peter Real. My last name is RiehL. Check out the page that describes the benefits of a Patreon membership, including cool swag and bonus episodes. Thanks in advance for supporting my one-man show, my DIY podcast, my extensive reading, research, editing, and promoting to keep this independent podcast pumping out high-quality content. The intro song for the Chills at Will podcast is Wind Down Instrumental, and the other song played on the episode was Hoops Instrumental by Matt Whitehour. Both songs are used through archesaudio.com. Please tune in for episode 166 with Kai Harris, who's a writer and educator from Detroit, Michigan. She uses her voice to uplift the Black community through realistic fiction centered on the Black experience, and she's the author of What the Fireflies Knew, the first fiction title from Tiny Reparations' book. She is an assistant professor of creative writing at Santa Clara University. Go Broncos! This episode will air on Valentine's Day, February 14th. For now, thanks again for listening. I hope that these uncertain days bring you texts by writers with mad skills, like Anna Hogeland, whose work, like The Long Answer, gives you chills at will.